Today I'm going to read chapter 7 and 8 from Tuesdays with Morrie. Let's begin. In the campus bookstore, I shop for the items on Morrie's reading list. I purchase books that I never knew existed, titles such as Youth, Identity and Crisis, I and Thou, The Divided Self. Before college, I did not know the study of human relations could be considered scholarly until I met Morrie. I did not believe it, but his passion for books is real and contagious. We began to talk seriously sometimes after class, when the room has emptied. He asked me questions about my life and then quotes lines from Martin Buber, Eric Erikson. Often he refers to their words, footnoting his own advice, even though he obviously thought the same things himself. It is at these times that I realize he is indeed a professor, not an uncle. One afternoon, I'm complaining about the confusion of my age, what is expected of me versus what I want for myself. How I told you about the tension of opposites. Have I told you about the tension of opposites? He says, the tension of opposites. Life is a series of pulls back and forth. You must do one thing, but you are bound to do something else. Something hurts you, yet you know it shouldn't. You take certain things for granted, even when you know you should never take anything for granted. A tension of opposites, like a pull on a rubber band, and most of us live somewhere. Sounds like a wrestling match, I say. A wrestling match? He smiles. You could describe life that way. So which side wins? I ask. Which side wins? He smiles at me. The crinkled eye, the crooked tooth. Love wins. Love always wins. Taking attendance. I flew to London a few weeks later. I was covering Wimbledon's, the world's premier tennis competition, and one I go to where the crowd never boos and no one is drunk in the parking lot. England was warm and cloudy, and each morning I walked the tree-lined streets near the tennis courts, passing teenagers queued up for leftover tickets and vendors selling strawberries and cream. Outside the gate was a newsstand that sold a half dozen colorful British tabloids featuring photos of topless women, paparazzi pictures of the royal horoscope, sports, lottery contests, and a wee bit of actual news. The top headline of the day was written on a small chalkboard that leaned against the latest stack of papers. I usually read something like Diana in row with Charles or Gaza to team give me millions. People scooped up these tabloids, devoured their gossips, and on previous trips to England I had always done the same. But now, for some reason, I find myself thinking about Morrie whenever I read something silly or mindless. I keep picturing him here, there, in the house with the Japanese maple and the hardwood floors, counting his breath and squeezing out every moment. While I spent so many hours on things that meant absolutely nothing to me personally, movie stars, supermodels, the latest noise out of Princess Di or Modena or John F. Kennedy. In a strange way, I envied the quality of Morrie's life, Morrie's time, even as I lamented its distraction supply. Why did we bother with all the distractions we did? Back home, the O.J. Simpson trial was in full swing, and there were people who surrendered their entire lunch hours watching it. The rest so they could watch more at night. They didn't know O.J. Simpson. They did not know anyone involved in the case, yet they gave up days and weeks of their life addicted to someone else's drama. I remembered what Morrie said during our visit. The culture we have does not make people feel good about themselves, and you have to be strong enough to say if the culture does not work. Don't buy it. Morrie, true to his words, had developed his own culture long before he got sick. Discussion group, walks with his friend, dancing to his music in the Harvard Square Church. He started a project called Greenhouse, where poor people could receive mental health services. He read books to find new ideas for his classes, visited with colleagues, keep up with old letters to distant friends. He took more time eating and looking at nature than and wasted no time in front of TV sitcoms or movies of the week. He had created a cocoon of human activities, conversation, interaction, affection, and it filled his life like an overflowing soup bowl. I had always developed my own culture. Work. I did 4 or 5 media jobs in England, juggling them like a clown. I spent 8 hours a day on a computer, feeding my stories back to the States. Then I did TV pieces, traveling with a crew throughout parts of London. I also phoned in radio reports every morning and afternoon. This was not an abnormal load. Over the years, I had taken labor as my companion. I had moved everything else to the side. In Wimbledon, I ate meals at my little wooden work cubicle and thought of nothing of it. On one particular crazy day, a crush of reporters had tried to chase down Enrique Agassi and his famous girlfriend, Brooke Shields, over by a British photographer who barely muttered sorry before sweeping past. His huge male lenses, his huge metal lenses streaked around his neck. I thought of something else. Morrie had told me. So many people walk around with a meaningless life. They seem half asleep even when they are busy doing things they think are important. This is because they are chasing the wrong things. The way you get meaning into your life is to devote yourself to loving others. Devote yourself to your community around you and devote yourself to creating something that gives you purpose and meaning. I knew he was right. Now that I did nothing about it, at the end of the tournament and the countless cups of coffee I drank to get through it, computer, cleaned out my cubicle, and went back to the apartment to pack. It was late. The TV was nothing but fuzz. I flew to Detroit, arrived late in the afternoon, dragged myself home, and went to sleep. I awoke to a jolting piece of news. The unions at my newspaper had gone on strike. The place was shut down. There were the picketers at the front entrance and marchers standing up and down the street. As a member of the union, I had no choice. I was suddenly and for the first time in my life out of job. I did against my employees. Union leaders called my home and warned me against any contact with my former editors, many of whom were my friends, telling me to hang up if they tried to call and plead their case. We are going to fight until we win. The union leaders swore, sounding like soldiers. I felt confused and depressed. Although the TV and radio work were nice supplements, the newspaper had been my lifeline, my oxygen. When I saw my stories in print in each morning, I knew that in at least one way I was alive. Now it was gone. And as the strike continued, the first day, the second day, the third day, there were worried phone calls and rumors that this could go on for months. Everything I had known was upside down. There were sporting events each night that I would have gone to cover. Instead, I stayed home. watched them on TV. I had grown used to thinking readers somehow needed my column. I was stunned at how easily things went on without me. After a week of this, I picked up the phone and dialed Morrie's number. Connie brought him to the phone. "You're coming to visit me," he said, less a question than a statement. "Well, could I? How about Tuesday?" "Tuesday would be good," I said. "Tuesday would be fine." In my sophomore year, I take two more office courses beyond the classroom, meeting now and then just to talk. I have never done this before with an adult who was not a relative, yet I feel comfortable doing it with Morrie, and he seems comfortable making the time. He asked tirishly when I enter his office. In the spring, we sit under a tree outside the sociology building, and in the winter, we sit by his desk. Me in my grey sweatshirt and Adidas sneakers, Morrie shoes and corduroy pants. Each time we talk, he listens to me ramble, then he tries to pass on some sort of life lesson. He warns me that money is not the most important thing, contrary to the popular view on campus. He tells me I need to be fully human. He speaks of the alienation of youth and the need for connectedness with the society around me. Some of the things I am, some I do not. It makes no difference. The discussion gives an excuse to talk to him. Fatherly conversation I cannot have with my own father. I need to be lawyer. Or he hates lawyers. "What do you want to do when you get out of college?" he asked. "I want to be a musician," I say. "Piano player." "Wonderful," he says, "but that's our life." "Yeah, a lot of sharks. That's what I hear." Still, if you really want it, then you will make your dream happen. I want to hug you. I want to hug him, to thank him for saying that, but I am not that open. I'm instead. "I'll bet you play piano with a lot of pep," he says. I laugh. "Pep?" He laughs back. "Pep, what's the matter?" They don't say that anymore. First Tuesday we talk about the world. Connie opened the door and let me in. Morrie was in his wheelchair by the kitchen table, wearing a loose cotton shirt and even looser black sweatpants. They were loose because his legs had atrophied beyond normal clothing size. You could get two hands around his thighs and have your fingers touch. Had he been able to stand, he would have been no more than 5 feet tall, and he would probably have fit into a sixth grader's jeans. "I got you something," I announced, holding up a brown paper bag. I stopped on my way from the airport at a nearby supermarket and purchased some turkey, potato salad, and macaroni salad, and bagels. I knew there was plenty of food at the house, but I wanted to contribute something. I was so powerless to help Morrie otherwise, and I remember his fondness for eating. "Ah, so much food," he sang. "Well, now you have to eat it with me." We sat at the surrounded by wicker chairs, this time without the need to make up 16 years of conversation. We slid quickly into the familiar waiters of our old college dialogue. Morrie asking questions, listening to my replies, stopping like a chef to sprinkle in something I would have forgotten. He asked about the newspaper strike. True to form, he couldn't. And he asked me about the newspaper strike, and true to form, he couldn't understand why both sides did not simply communicate with each other and solve their problems. I told him not everyone was as smart as he was. Occasionally, he had to stop to use the bathroom, a process that took quite some time. Connie would wheel him to the toilet, then lift him from the chair and support him as he urinated into the beaker. Each time he came back, he looked tired. Do you remember when I told Dad Coppel that pretty soon someone was gonna have to wipe my ass? He said. I laughed. You don't forget a moment like that. Well, I think that day is coming. That one bothers me. Why? Because it's the ultimate sign of dependency. Someone wiping your bottom. But I'm working on it. I'm trying to enjoy the process. Enjoy it? Yes. After all, I get to be a baby one more time. Way of looking at it. Well, I have to look at life uniquely now. Let's face it, I can go shopping, I can take care of the bank accounts, I can take out the garbage, but I can sit here with my dwindling days and look at what I think is important in life. I have both the time and the reason to do. So I said, in a reflexly cynical response, I guess the key to finding the meaning of life is to stop taking out the garbage. He laughed, and I was relieved that he did. As Connie took the plates away, I noticed a stack of newspapers obviously been read before I got there. You bother keeping up with the news? I asked. Yes, Morrie said. Do you think that's strange? Do you think because do you think because I'm dying, I shouldn't care about what happens in this world? Maybe, he sighed. Maybe you're right. Maybe I shouldn't care. After all, I won't be around to see how it all turns out. But it's hard to explain much. Now that I'm suffering, I feel closer to people who suffer than I ever did before. The other night on TV, I saw people in Bosnia running across the street, getting fired upon, killed innocent victims, and I just started to cry. I feel their anguish as if it were my own. I don't know any of these people, but how can I put this? I'm almost drawn to them. His eyes got moist, and I tried to change the subject, but he dabbed his face and waved me off. I cry all the time now, he said. Never mind. Amazing, I thought. I worked in the news business. I covered stories where people died. I interviewed grieving family members. I even attended the funerals. I never cried. Morrie, for the suffering of people half a world away, was weeping. Is this what comes at the end? I wondered. Maybe death is the great equalizer, the one big thing that can strangers shed a tear for one another. Morrie Hong, this is okay with you, isn't it? Man crying. Sure, I said, too quickly. He grinned. Mitch, I'm gonna loosen you up. One day I'm gonna show you it's okay to cry. Yeah, I said. Yeah, he said. We laughed because he used to say the same thing nearly 20 years earlier, mostly on Tuesdays. In fact, Tuesday had always been our day together. Most of my courses with Morrie were on Tuesdays. He had office hours on Tuesdays, and when I wrote my senior thesis, which was pretty much Morrie's suggestion, right from the start, it was on Tuesdays that we sat together. By his desk or in the cafeteria or the steps of a Pullman hall, going over the work. So it seemed only fitting that we were back together on a Tuesday here at Japanese Maple out front. As I read it to go, I mentioned this to Morrie. We are Tuesday people, he said. Tuesday people? I repeated. Morrie smiled. Mitch, you asked about can I even know? But can I tell you the thing I'm learning most with this dizzy? What's that? The most important thing in life is to learn how to give out love and to let it come in. His voice dropped to a whisper. Let it come in. We think we don't deserve love. We think if we let it in, we will become too soft. But a wise man named Levin said it right. He said, love is the only rational act. He repeated it carefully, pausing for effect. Is the only rational act. I nodded like a good student and he exhaled neatly. I leaned over to give him a hug, and then, although it is not really like me, I kissed him on the cheek. I felt his hands on my arms, the thin stumble of his whiskers bruising my face. So I'll come back next Tuesday, he whispered. Thank you, everyone.